Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Honorable Sepo. I see you there.
Hi, how are you, Chair?
I'm good, and how are you, my brother?
I'm well, thank
Morning
you.
to everyone.
Hi,
Morning,
morning, Makapalo.
morning. Yo, I can see when it's raining, we are early.
You
Yeah.
You know,
were
we are,
just landing from the airport.
yeah,
Ah,
as long as you log in, ma.
I've logged in. Sis.
Okay.
Are you in Parliament?
No, I'm at my house.
Oh, are you not in house?
I'm at my house in Stellenbosch.
Stellenbosch.
Yebo, ma.
I must come and see Stellenbosch.
One day, ma, one day. You know, I'm supposed to
One
travel.
day. We can't always stay in parliamentary houses, whereas there is Stellenbosch.
They've got very good wines, ma.
Yeah. I left home at 2:10.
10 past in the morning.
This morning.
You
My flight was at 6:30.
how long drive is it to the airport?
2 hours.
Hours.
No, that's a long distance.
Good morning, honorable members and colleagues.
Good
Good morning, Ilega.
Good morning, Chileka.
Morning. Yes. Members, we do meet the required quorum for us to proceed with our meeting. So I will quickly preside over the election of the acting chair. So chair was requested to attend a BRICS meeting, which starts today in Brazil. So therefore, we need to elect an acting chair for this meeting in terms of rule 159 of the National Assembly. So I will now call for nominations, members. Thank you. Honorable Tiblock, I see your hand.
Thank you, Secretary, and good morning to everybody on the platform, members, colleagues from the NSPCA and the department. Given Honorable Nalumango's excellent chairing in previous sessions, I'd like to nominate her.
Thank you, Honorable Tiblock.
My hand is up, Sisi.
Makumalo, your hand is up.
Thank you very much. Yes, my hand is up. Let me take this opportunity to greet every honorable member that is in the platform and our officials. I want to second Honorable De Block with the nomination of the name of Honorable Nalumango. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the name of Honorable Nalumango, members? None. Honorable Nalumango, do you accept the nomination to act as the chair for this meeting?
I do accept, Chileka.
Thank you. Over to you. You are duly elected as the acting chair. Thank you, members. Over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chileka. Let me just first start by greeting everyone on the platform, all honorable members that are present on the platform. Let me also greet, I'm looking at the list of delegations. I'm not seeing whether any of our deputy ministers and minister is here, but in absentia, if they are not here on the platform, I'm also greeting them, as well as all members of the department, as well as the NSPCA that is visiting us today. I just want to put a few house rules in place, and that is because we're on an online platform and we have had visitors from our local government sphere before, and we've known what has happened there. Because we are online, some people are so not familiar sometimes with the technology. So we're on the Zoom platform where you have to stay muted until the chairperson is giving you an opportunity to speak, where the NSPCA will be addressing us and presenting to us. They will be speaking. They will indicate who will speak from on their part, and then we will allow them to come in. For our honorable members, they have always respected the platform. They've always remained muted and always just raised their hands when they wanted to be recognized. So let us continue with that. I just thought I should put those house rules in place, especially when we are having guests from outside on our platform. Now, all honorable members, the welfare of animals in captivity remains a critical focus for this portfolio committee. Building directly on the foundational work of our predecessors, as highlighted in the legacy report we received during our induction, it is our clear responsibility to ensure continued progress, especially in addressing the gaps identified by the high-level panel of experts. This panel extensively reviewed wildlife in captivity, pinpointing areas where there is a need to harmonize or improve the implementation of relevant legislation and refine practices between the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. The NSPCA as a statutory body, is a crucial partner in enabling this committee to carry out its oversight duties effectively. Your role is crucial in addressing complex issues that impact both departments, including the implementation of the high-level panel's recommendations on captive animals, combating the growing problem of snaring, and addressing the mismanagement of wildlife in our parks or private facilities. While today marks our first engagement with the NSPCA in the 7th administration, we are eager to foster a relationship that leads to more frequent interactions, all driven by the shared goal of improving animal welfare and strengthening working relations among all government agencies involved. Our recent interactions with Sand Parks and Sandby have brought to light the alarming escalation of snaring and the concerning deterioration of animal welfare in captivity, with some animals even requiring rescue by Sandby, while factors such as education levels, unemployment, food insecurity, and the increase in damage-causing animals can certainly impact snaring rates. We've also observed a disturbing rise in poaching coordinated by organized syndicates targeting vulnerable species. Similarly, cruelty to animals cannot be a silent crime, where prosecutions are negligible. We recognize the challenges in prosecuting individuals involved in snaring, including an effective legal system, non-compliance with legislation by operators, and gathering sufficient evidence. To secure a successful conviction, which can be equally challenging, however, we must work collaboratively to overcome these hurdles. With these words, I welcome you all on the platform. Okay, thank you, Chief, for flighting our agenda. Is it possible to take us through the apologies, Chief?
Yes, Chair, I received apologies from the Minister, Honorable George, the DG, Ms. Chabalala, our Chairperson, Honorable Paulson indicated that he will join us later. The colleagues from the department can just advise if the DMs will be joining us. Those are the apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chileka. We can now move over to the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a mover? Honorable Makasi.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to honorable members and officials present in the platform. I move to adopt the agenda. Thank you.
Dr. Managa. Dr. Managa, you're not audible. Okay, thank you, Dr. Managa. You may proceed. You need to unmute yourself, Dr. Managa. I think Dr. Managa is experiencing technical issues. Honorable Kumalo.
Thank you very much, Chair. I second Honorable Makasi for the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Honorable Kumalo. And with that, our agenda is duly adopted. So we may proceed with the meeting. Chileka, will you be taking us through the delegation, or would you like me to do that?
You can, Chair, or I can from my side. Just need to get it. Let's see.
Okay, I do have
All
it.
right, and Chair from you do have it.
Yes, but sometimes I'm asking for assistance because I'm looking at some of the surnames, and I'm very old when it comes to surnames. So I think you
I'll
as
assist you.
yes,
I'll
thank you.
assist you. Yeah, I'll assist you, Chair.
I see here the DGG of Biodiversity and Conservation, Miss Flora. Is it Mogoloa? Our CD Sector Enforcement, Miss Frances Craig. CD Governance and Executive Support, Ms. Zuleika Maestri. Director Law Reform, Mr. Sibusiso Kubese. Director Tops and Sites, Ms. Olga Kumalo. Director ODG, Pomolo Sekrobela. Parliamentary Strategic Support, Office of the Minister, Mr. Temba Gift Nguni. PLO Deputy Minister, Ms. Swat Simeon Kanunu. PLO Deputy Minister, Mr. Singh, Mr. Haresh Indral. Parliamentary Support ODG, Ms. Yamkela Mbokoto. Intern Parliamentary Support ODG, Ms. Piwokuhle Dingiswayo. Then we have NSPCA, National Office, Mr. Douglas Volhuter, and he's the National Chief Inspector and Manager of Wildlife Protection Unit. And that is the delegations list that I've received.
Correct, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chileka. We will now receive a briefing by the NSPCA on progress on the implementation of the report of the high-level panel on captive animals. Chi, is it possible to just flight the presentation that we've received? And then the representative from the NSPCA need to get ready to take us through the presentation. Can we have the presenter from the NSPCA to take us through the presentation, please? Is it Mr. Douglas Voluter that will do the presentation? Mr. Douglas, the platform is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to honourable members and guests. Sorry, I'm one of those that are technologically challenged when it comes to these things. So especially on the Teams platform, on the Zoom platform. So for us, and I think for the majority, we actually initially thought that we were getting a briefing from the ministry about the progress of the high-level panel. So what we've done is we've actually taken it back to the inspectorate perspective, because where we're working on the ground, that's which initiated all of this. I'm just going to go to that. So as explained, we're a statutory body, whereas we've got our own Act of Parliament, and we've got to ultimately do all things reasonably necessary or incidental in the achievement of carrying out our legal mandate. And that's within our SPCA Act. And how we got here and how we are still carrying on is in Judge Cameron's report in the judgments in the Supreme Court. And he noted that all animals are sentient beings, that they are capable of suffering and experiencing pain. And that's a critical factor for moving on with this industry and where we're going to go with it. In the Constitutional Court case with Judge Kampepe, You related to the intertwined values of animal welfare and conservation. Again, stating animal conservation cannot exist in isolation from animal welfare. In the recent case, Judge Collipin, and this was over the lion bone export quota, which was challenged by the NSPCA. Judge Collipin again reinforced the fact that animal welfare and conservation together reflect intertwined values. This basically means no official can make a decision regarding an animal without considering its welfare. And most recently, in the NSPCA versus Daybreak Foods, I think most of you would see that it's been all over the news lately with the culling that we've also had to carry out. Judge Reed stated the National Council for the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty, NSPCA, has a statutory mandate which is contained in the Animals Protection Act. The Animal Protection Act appointed the NSPCA as the legislative body responsible for the implementation and enforcement of animal protection. The NSPCA has as its overall aim the protection and welfare of all animals. And again, that's 4 judgments that have reinforced the values of what we do at the NSPCA. And we are unique. We're an NGO, we're an NPO, yet we're also an organ of state, which is important. We need to be consulted with what happens with animals. Sorry, so just a short progress timeline for the closure of the lion industry. On the 7th of December 2022, the Minister Creasy established the ministerial task team. It was then extended for another 3 months. And then on the 3rd of April, the ministerial task team report was released and adopted by Cabinet. And I think that's critical that it was adopted by Cabinet. The Minister then established a task team to facilitate the implementation of the Ministerial Task Team report and recommendations. On the 15th of November 2024, there's a media statement released by Minister George calling for voluntary exits from the industry. And in November 2024, the Minister called for comments on draft notices prohibiting certain activities. So for us, where we've come from and what we intend. So the intended actions from the panel would have been, with the task team, would have been no new permits, no permits issued to new facilities. Unfortunately, we don't have insight into that. There's no information sharing on that. A full audit of the lion farming industry, a moratorium on breeding, and putting an end to lion bone stockpiles. And then obviously working on a phase-out plan, ultimately. The actual actions are, we're not aware of a full and extensive audit of the industry. And the NSPCA, I think as you can see from those judgments, must be party to those audits of the industry in terms of the animal welfare. We haven't seen a moratorium on breeding. Every facility that we're inspecting, there's cubs and sub-adults, which means that there is breeding carrying on. The lion bone stockpiles, they're still in existence. There's been plans to buy them out, buy them over, yet I don't think we're quite there yet. And a phase-out plan is a work in progress, which is through various task teams that have been appointed. So just to take you through some of the issues we have for inspections, because it sounds like it's an easy feat. So we've got a lot of abstraction and lately social media influence. And by that, I'm talking about WhatsApp groups, which have been formed across certain provinces. We've got 2 provinces we are aware of, the Free State and the Northwest, where as soon as our inspectors are in the area, the word gets around, sent by these platforms, and suddenly nobody's at home and we can't get access even with a warrant. They require us to make appointments as the EMIs would do normally. Unfortunately, we do not make appointments for inspections. We are there to carry out routine inspections and do our duty in terms of the Animals Protection Act. We then have the nature conservation officials and mandates, where obviously there's going to start being overlaps in terms of welfare and well-being, and we look forward to working with nature conservation officials to ensure that this happens. And then in saying that, I think we've got to be very realistic and know that the NSPCA, as well as the nature conservation bodies, do not have the capacity to carry out all of what's been asked for. And in terms of a full audit of the industry with over 300 facilities, with the EMIs still doing their work on the ground, the permitting officials doing their work on the ground, and the NSPCA still carrying out their normal functions, I think we're going to see a severe constraint in trying to get this done correctly. Information sharing, that relates basically through to us and the nature conservation entities, wherein we're looking at permits and where we would ask people at the relevant facility entity not to issue a permit. Another challenge is the failure to comply with warnings, and these are at the line facilities, and which means we have to do repeated inspections, and obviously that constrains us even further. 10th is the slow justice system, and I'm very glad that was brought up initially. I personally have a case from May 2019, and we're going on to, I think, our 47th appearance in court. So we're taking 6 years just to do one case. And that's unacceptable. There needs to be a specialized justice system if we want to get anywhere with any welfare mandates. So what have we seen on the ground? And this is just a prelude to what we will see. So we serve on the Wildlife Wellbeing Forum. There's the DFFE's appointed task team. And basically, we're looking for the disparities in regulations. The Wildlife Forum has access to Wildlife Wellbeing Forum. However, there's no reciprocal process. So what I mean by that is the Wildlife Forum is an industry forum who have access to the Wildlife Wellbeing Forum. However, we, the Wildlife Wellbeing Forum, are not party to what's the actions that are happening within the Wildlife Industry Forum. And there needs to be a reciprocal process, because otherwise we're going to just keep hitting our heads against a wall. And as you can see, the moratorium on breeding, if you look in the picture, you can see quite clearly those are juvenile cubs and tigers. And again, in 2023, I was fortunate enough to present to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee at the time over the welfare concerns that we keep encountering. And from 2023 until 2025, we are still back at the basics. And the APA can only do so much. So I've put a very short clause from each section, although several charges would apply to each case. And in this, obviously, you need to have potable water for your animals. And I don't think anyone would disagree that that water is not potable. There's no one that would readily drink from that, human or animal. And again, we continue to see issues with diets, and I would dearly love to run through the 2023 presentation had we the time, because nothing has changed. We had diet concerns then, we've got diet concerns now. Any carnivore expert or wildlife vet will know you cannot keep feeding chickens as a staple diet to lions and without supplementing them with protein powders and the required vitamins and minerals. So again, Section 21A of the Animals Protection Act applies across the board. Where we went back to the water, it's quite evident there. Ill treats or neglects the animal, neglects the animal's environment. And ill treating, I think we can all understand that. And again, Section 21E of the Animals Protection Act. So any person who fails to render or procure veterinary or other medical attention that he's able to procure is guilty, will be guilty of an offense. And if you look at that image, you can see a lion with a severe infection around the muzzle. And on this one, you will see the melanomas that are formed on the lion's face, which again have not been addressed. This is a big one, unfortunately, because you would think it's one of the basics. It's almost akin to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Shelter has to be provided. What you're seeing in that image is not shelter. The shelter, and this is where we have the problem with most of the lion farmers in the industry, is that they do not provide shelter that can accommodate all the animals at any one time and shelter them from weather, heat, and cold. You also have to take note of lions' behaviors, and you can't have one massive camp with a shelter because you could end up with bullied lions who need to get away, and obviously in a confined environment they can't, and they wouldn't want to share the shelter with the lion that is bullying them. So again, the environmental enrichment, which also actually boils down to ill treats and neglects, Section 21A of the Animals Protection Act. There is no enrichment. Animals are put out into camps, and the only enrichment, I guess, they could get is when it comes to feed time. And yet feed times are normally routine. They're not staggered, so the lions expect this all the time. So it's not enrichment anymore. The moment that the animal loses interest in something, the enrichment is finished. You need to change it up. Two 21A again comes up in every single one of these. But what you're actually seeing in that image is lions lying on feces in feeding areas which are unhygienic. And I think if we look back to the 2023 presentation, we had exactly the same thing that was going on. Different images, but the same thing was happening. These cubs, the photo unfortunately doesn't show it very well, but they were infested with mites and ticks. And that's an offense yet again of Section 21E because they're keeping that animal in a dirty or parasitic condition. And here's the next thing that we've got. I think you've noticed throughout the presentation that there's been tigers that have been highlighted. And in terms of the TOPS regulations, it's a duty to prevent hybridization and or inbreeding. And if we seeing this sort of thing arise on our inspections, what are the nature conservation officials seeing and what are they doing about it? But the exotics have to be taken more seriously. We've had only 2 lion case convictions. Gert Klaassen from Stelfontein, who pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a 4,000 Rand fine or 12 months imprisonment, but wholly suspended for 5 years. Our recent case, which I think was last month with the professor at Lion's Rest, he was sentenced to 5,000 Rand fine or 10 months imprisonment, half of which is suspended for 5 years. So effectively walking away with a 2,500 Rand fine. And this brings us to the elements of the Animals Protection Act. The Animals Protection Act is an effective act. It really is. If you know how to interpret it and apply it, it's an extremely good act, despite its age. The provisions, the penalty provisions, though, within the act are what are really hampering any further progress. If you look at these two cases, they were in court. I mean, they were in the justice system for around 2 years each one. And we, as the NSPCA, will attend every single one of our appearances. And that costs us more money than what the penalties or the fines are that these guys that the offended are being given. So there's a lot of writing on this. But basically on the left were issues that we brought up when we presented to the Portfolio Committee in 2023. And if you look to the right, basically the same things are happening again. We spoke about mandates between the EMIs and the NSPCA. We've still got 6 dockets still caught up in the justice process. Access to facilities, information difficulties. And what we have seen is reduced joint operations between the NSPCA and nature conservation. And we really need to work together if we want to effectively do something about this industry and the closure thereof. So this was an image from my 2023 presentation. What you're seeing there is the lion skin of a lion that had been attacked by other lions, had suffered massive bone callousing on his rear leg, and ultimately the 6 other male lions attacked him and killed him. But we highlighted the animal welfare concerns at that time. So now we might ask, well, what's changed? Because we're 2 years down the line, and where are we? And this is where we are. We've got non-compliance that we're picking up on our inspections with NEMBA and the TOPS regulations, as well as the Animals Protection Act. But you can see it's clear as day. These are images, and we've only included images here from since 2024. So it's 2024 on, and this is what we've picked up in the interim. So you can see non-compliance is annoying. Dead animals are not being disclosed. Stockpiles of lion carcasses are not being disclosed. And of course, you've got cabs, which are just treated as simply rubbish. Again, here we've got undeclared lion skins. And our questions here are, how did the animal live and how did it die? I think there was, no, I actually can't speculate. There were many lion skins, as you can see. And this is part of a case that we are busy with. And again, this was from the 2023 presentation, where upon our inspections, we come across unpermitted and illegal actions, such as lion meat, which is being kept and not part of the Meat Safety Act or the Animal Improvements Act. We've got shark fins, opium factory busts. So where we do and where we are able to work with government entities, we make incredible progress. So what changed from this? So in a recent operation, we discovered these drugs, highly scheduled drugs, which a vet should be keeping, or they should be kept under lock and key. Methatomidine, ketamine, and yohimbine. These are drugs to sedate as well as awaken an animal from sedation. But again, right out in the open, that is an illegal action yet again. So we brought about tigers in this presentation for a specific reason. South Africa, we're moving, and I understand it, we all understand it, that it started with the lions, with the lion bone export quota, and we've slowly moved. The industry can see the writings on the wall. So they're moving to their next target, which are tigers. And tigers in South Africa have almost no protection. The Animals Protection Act is the only act really that offers any protection. Within South Africa, there's no law for anyone to keep tigers in their provinces, hunt them in their provinces, and keep and stockpile their skeletons and their skins. Now, these are CITES Appendix 1 animals, which have even less protection in South Africa than anywhere else. We understand the constraints of the DFFE because they can only take action in terms of CITES, and that's when it gets to the border. But where are all these animals being kept? Where are the stockpiles being kept? We've gone from a facility that used to, in 2019, have 88 tigers at a facility. Now it's got 61. Yet tigers breed phenomenally fast. They breed as well as lions do. So what's happened to all of the offspring? And where are they now? So the future, we'd like to see collaborative efforts between our parties. We've got to consider future compliance aspects because we know there's staffing and funding aspects for any business, for us as an NGO and an NPO, as well as government. And we are willing to partake in a DFFE-funded project-specific operation to carry out the required audits at the facilities. And due to our statutory obligations, the audits should not be done without us there. We're the law enforcement body for animal welfare, and we cannot be excluded from these audits. We've often seen where people have gone to a facility, walked through it, and found no concerns at all. And yet when we walk through, we will find concerns in many areas, including the animals' behavior as well as the conditions that they're living in. So we do want to work with joint operations. And of late, we've had some reasonable success, which is getting better and better with the compliance and enforcement aspect with the DFFE. And we just look forward to carrying on with that. We have to get this job done. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Originally, I thought we had 20 minutes, so it is a little bit shorter than the required time. But if you'd be happy, I'd be happy to run through the 2023 presentation for your interest, for those that never saw it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wouter, for your presentation. I would like you to also take us through the other presentation, and then as a whole, we will take all the questions from our honorable members. So if you could also take us through the other presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so this is something that really was brought to our attention at the SNARE Symposium. And it's where we realized at that time that, well, we've always known snaring is a horrendous act of cruelty. But during the SNARE Symposium, it came to light that the ordinances, the various provincial ordinances, allow snaring under permit. Again, this was just about the NSPCA, which we've now just gone through, so I don't think we need to go through that again. Obviously, the extra there is that we've got specialized units, being farm, animal, the special projects units, who each enforce and carry out their own specific mandates. We've gone through the court cases, the moral obligation to recognize animals as sentient beings capable of suffering. And that's critical to moving forward with anything, any law changes, any regulations. We have to bear this in mind, that animal welfare and well-being are critical. They're interlinked values. So what is snaring? Snaring is a device used to capture a wild animal. Most commonly a damage-causing animal or a problem animal, or they're also called opportunistic animals. And yet they're not species specific. So any animal can be caught up in a snare. Just to take some time to look at that domestic dog, which was pretty much, I'm sure, not the intended target. So welfare impacts, prolonged suffering, inhumane death, obviously, I mean, it's starvation, it's thirst, panic, dehydration, hypothermia. These animals get incredibly stressed. Although that's a dog, a domestic dog, I think you can relate to, because if you have a dog chained up, you know how the dog is going through those emotions of stress, terror. They become fear biters. So there's a lot that is shared within this realm as well. So of course, snares don't discriminate between species, as I said, and it just keeps going. These were two particular cases that I personally dealt with. And as you can see on the photo on the left, they're deeply embedded as a snare in that dog's neck. And I don't think any of us have to be a veterinarian to understand the extreme pain that this causes to both the donkey, and the wildlife. We've been very fortunate to work with Conrad from Canine Conservation, been out and gone and worked in the field with him. And the amount of cruelty that these anti-poaching units are being exposed to is absolutely next level. We deal with animal cruelty within an almost controlled aspect because it's captive wildlife. Whereas they're getting out there and seeing what these snares are doing, the absolute carnage it's causing to our wildlife. And these are obviously, there's various reasons for snares being set. I think you alluded to it in the beginning, where you spoke of crime syndicates. There's massive bushmeat trade. I'm not sure if anyone's aware of the zebra post we had on our own Facebook page, where a zebra had caught itself in the fence and was brutally hacked to death, and that meat sold. So the bushmeat trade is thriving. It's not just rhino that are feeling the brunt of this. It's not just the pangolin, although that's not snaring, it's illegal trade and trafficking. This crocodile was caught in the snare. And then you might ask, well, how does a crocodile get out there and to be caught in a body snare like it is? Sadly, it's not the greatest view, but I couldn't zoom in anymore. But also what these poachers are doing is they're using their own dogs to lure these crocodiles out the water to come and attack their own animals. That's how bad this is, and that's what the anti-poaching units are dealing with constantly. Which brings us to the next thing, is the law. And I think it came out quite strongly at the Snare Symposium that the law is not helping. Much like the Animals Protection Act, where your penalties are, unless it's a tops animal, your penalties aren't as severe. The problem is that most of these guys are given bails, and they get bailed quickly, they get out the next day, and they just start the whole process again. A lot of them are coming in from other countries, a lot of the poachers, and so as soon as they're let out from court, they simply cross the border and they're free again. So this brings us to why we're bringing this to the honourable members of the Portfolio Committee. Snaring, as you can see, and as I've explained throughout, is contrary to the Animals Protection Act. Various provincial ordinances, they allow snaring as long as the landowner gives their permission and as long as the Nature Conservation Permitting Office issues a permit for them to set up a snare. And that's where we have a significant problem, and that's where we need help from the honourable members, is that this has to be taken out of your nature conservation ordinances. It's against the law. There's no one person that has ever showed me any photo or any footage of an animal caught in a snare that is not either stressed, suffered, or died a long, lingering death. So how can we have that aspect in nature conservation's ordinances? So snaring, obviously, through a poacher's eyes, is always illegal. And we've shown you what groups like Canine Conservation are facing. And whenever the local SPCA has taken snared animals, inevitably, in their cases, it is a domestic animal that's been caught up in a snare and is the unintended target. So it goes against the very essence of the Animals Protection Act. It also has implications on Section 4 of our Bill of Rights. And in terms of the environment, to have the environment protected. So environment isn't just simply your trees or your water, your flora. It includes the animals. And it's got to be through reasonable legislative and other measures. So can we have an ordinance give out an instruction which is contrary to the Animals Protection Act? I doubt it. It's also to promote conservation and secure ecologically sustainable development and use of natural resources while prompting justifiable economic and social development. And in that, where we're seeing the intensification of wildlife farming, we've got to still make sure that there's a welfare component that's considered and that ecologically sustainable development isn't misconstrued as just becoming farmed animals. So a lot of these we're going to try and get through quite quickly because I think there is a lot of reading, unfortunately. But the important part here is that damage-causing animals are part and parcel of conservation. There are guidelines being drafted for the control of damage-causing animals, which was initially going to be norms and standards, which is now being downgraded to guidelines, which are not enforceable. So therefore, the onus then rests again on the NSPCA and SPCAs to go and enforce the Animals Protection Act because there is no norms and standards which are being enforced for the damage-causing animals. So we really have to consider the next steps very carefully as to whether the guidelines are changed to norms and standards or left as guidelines. So obviously, again, going back to poaching, it's one of the most cruel and indiscriminate poaching methods. There is no target. A targeted species is often not the species that is captured. Survivors are maimed for life. Some have scarring, incredible scarring, and suffer psychological trauma. They're sentient animals that's been reinforced by the courts. So they suffer. Those that survive the initial snaring are bludgeoned to death, stabbed to death, or mauled by dogs. And often poachers don't use guns because that would draw attention to where they are and what they're doing. So inevitably, I think we can all understand that the animal has to be killed somehow to be moved and it's never going to be a pleasant way to die. So in terms of the Animals Protection Act, it's quite clear. It's for any person who lays any trap or device for the purpose of capturing or destroying any animal, wild animal or wild bird, the destruction of which is not proved necessary for the protection of property or the spread of disease. And often these snaring obviously falls under this. And we know that you can set up trap cages, you can set up sorry, just lost my train of thought. Trap cages, you can set up tranquilizing, people darting, that's the word I was looking for, darting animals at night, or ultimately shooting them, which would be a far less severe penalty to the animal than being caught in a snare. And again, the ordinances also interestingly contain gin traps, where you're allowed use of a gin trap under the permit. And if you're laying a trap and you have to go and check that trap at least once every day. So if you're checking it once every day, so in 12 hours, you're going to have an animal caught in a snare or a gin trap, suffering the entire time up until somebody decides they're going to go and check the trap. And here's another one, section L, is except under the authority of a permit issued by a magistrate of the district, sells any trap. So if it's a trap for a rodent, and you are selling it, manufacturing it and selling it without a permit from the magistrate, it is an offence in terms of the Animals Protection Act. And this is one that comes up a lot, and I think we have answered it once when we were at a wildlife industry meeting, where it was decided that the Animals Protection Act does not cover wildlife. So the definition of an owner is any person having possession, charge, custody, or control of that animal, which means that any animal within a confined situation, even Kruger National Park, the Animals Protection Act applies. If, for instance, in the Kruger Park, a hyena was struck by a car, so the onus would remain on the park for them to intervene, because it's not animal on animal, it's clearly a human on animal issue. But the more intensive the farming, and I'm using farming in terms of the lions, the more intensive the farming, the more the Animals Protection Act actually applies, and we can use it more. In terms of snaring, users are not attaches to any animal, any equipment, appliance. So any equipment or appliance is a snare. It's a gin trap. It's whatever it is, and any humane method of trapping an animal can be seen as inhumane if it's used incorrectly. So common sense and logic and an understanding of animal sentience must come into play for everything we do. So in terms of poaching, this confined tethers or secures any animal unnecessarily, so as to afford that animal unnecessary suffering, and which affords inadequate space. And in terms of snaring, it's inadequate space because the animal, you'll see often paddle marks from them trying to escape from it. They can't get away. They get exposed to the elements that from the heat, cold, and weather. So it is a contravention of the Animals Protection Act. So we've already done A, which is one offence, B, another offence, C, yet another offence, because they're not going to go and provide feed and water to any snared animal. E, yet another offence, because they're not going to bring a vet out to come and destroy an animal that's caught in a snare, especially in a poaching situation. And I think there was a case with Dr. Bull Smiths, where a leopard had been caught in a trap cage and left to suffer and die in that cage. So it applies across the board, from somebody with good intentions to right through to poachers. Someone looking to protect their land from damage-causing animals or opportunistic animals, to the poachers. So we can look at this in several ways. So look at, for the training hounds established by a duly established and registered vermin club. I don't know how many vermin clubs there are registered in South Africa. The last I heard, there may have been one in the Free State, but in no other province. But liberates an animal as to expose it to attack or immediate attack or danger of attack by other animals, or baits or provokes any animal or incites any animal to attack another. And in the snaring cases, we've got dogs that are ripping animals, snared animals to pieces. So we've yet another clause that of the Animals Protection Act that's being broken. The next one again, M, conveys, carries, confines, secures, or restrains or tethers any animal. And that speaks again to the potable water, to shelter, food and water. So all of those are crimes. So another contravention of the Animals Protection Act. And section 2.2, which is basically just to state that the owner of the animal, bearing in mind the owner is the person who has charge and control and custody of the animal, shall be deemed to have permitted or procured the commission or omission of any act in relation to that animal, if by the exercise of reasonable care and supervision in respect of the animal, he could have prevented the commission or omission of such an act. And quite easily summed up is basically, if the owner of the animal does nothing to reduce the suffering of that animal, he is committing an offense. So the challenges that we have in terms of the application of the Animals Protection Act is snaring. We all know it's an anonymous crime. Yes, DNA can be taken, samples can be taken, but we also know there's a massive backlog in terms of DNA processing. And then to follow up on whoever's DNA you've managed to pick up. We can lay several charges for contraventions in terms of the Animals Protection Act, which I've just listed. There's at least 7 charges we can put to them. Yet in terms of the Fine Adjustments of Fines Act, they can be charged up to a maximum of 40,000 Rand upon conviction, or 1 year imprisonment, or a combination. But that's hardly sufficient when you're looking at the amount of suffering that these animals are doing. So again, our obstacles, long court and legal processes. We know, as I've said, I've got a case back from 2019 still in court. We've got cases being resolved after 2 years at the very most. And we've got several other cases which are now entering 3 and 4 years. And we get asked why we don't have cases, why where's all the dockets? There's so much cruelty, but we're not doing anything. Well, we are trying to do something. We're getting bottlenecks in the court process, which is hurting our conviction rate. So back to snaring. We often know, and we know from our long chats with Conrad from Canine Conservation, the poachers are getting cleverer now. They're using juveniles to set snares and recover carcasses, because they know that the juveniles cannot be charged the same way that the adults can. And I think it boils down to, we know that snaring boils down to many different reasons why snaring happens, which was explored at the Snare Symposium, which includes people's socioeconomic conditions, the crime syndicates, the opportunists. So we've got to look at each case individually in terms of that. But where we've got to start is we've got to stop the illegality that's contained within the ordinances which allow snaring under permit. That's if we don't start there, how can we expect to stop snaring when poachers are doing it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Volhuter. We are ahead of time. So your suggestion, your previous suggestion of taking us through the 2023 presentation, if you have the presentation on hand, then you can just take us through.
Yes, happily, I will gladly do that. Okay, so this was back then in 2023 when we did this presentation to the portfolio committee. And in the wild, lions have challenges. They also have choices. In captivity, there's an undisputed legal obligation for the owner to provide for everything for that animal. We can run through this again. This is the various acts as well that we brought to light in the previous presentation. And of course, the applicable legislation in terms of nature conservation and other acts, which we did not mention before. And that you might ask, why the Occupational Health and Safety Act? Well, you'll find out now soon. So in this instance, we've got an open gate and farm workers that are basically being put in there to give feed to the animals. I don't really care how strong a person thinks they are or how tough they are. Nobody's a match for a lion in a situation like that. Why is there no protection for the staff? Back then, we did 133 predator facility inspections in 2022. We issued 64 warnings and 10 animal welfare notices were issued. A notice is where the offense is there, but it's not, it's not severe enough for us to get a conviction out of that, should we issue a warning. I just have to also inform honourable members that there is nowhere in the Animals Protection Act that actually says we have to issue a warning or a notice. It's something that we do to try and get cooperation and because we know how long a court process is, we try and resolve the situations as they come up as fast as we can. In 2022, we had, this is specific to lion facilities, we had cause for 23 lions to be euthanized. We had 4 additional dockets that were registered. The one case in trial, and that was still the case from 2019, which finally got to trial. Okay, so these are the regulation or compliance issues that we find. So provinces like Northwest have a fencing policy, which is gazetted. And that sets out exactly how you should be doing, setting your droppers, setting your standards, your electrification, that you have to have management camps. And this is where we finding our concerns as well, is because even in the permitting conditions for keeping of captive predators, there's a provision for the animals to have fresh water, adequate diet, they must have shelter. So much of what we've just complained about in terms of the APA being contravened are also contraventions in many of the permit conditions as well. So some of the other issues we've got are the varying fencing policies that are inconsistent amongst provinces. For instance, in the Northwest province, you can keep 10 lions in a 1,500 square meter enclosure. in the Free State, you can keep 2 lions in a 1 hectare or 10,000 square meter enclosure. So there's vast differences across each province. So we've got to be also quite careful in how we apply the APA in terms of overcrowding and aspects like that. Sorry, just want to go back to that. We've been working with prosecutors because prosecutors, they may not always specialize in terms of the Animals Protection Act. So we quite happily assist prosecutors. The NSPCA also does host training with prosecutors. But we need specialized courts to handle wildlife cases, or any cases, any animal cases, like in Skakuza. At least the cases are getting heard. And that court cannot ever be afforded to be closed down. What you're seeing here is an extreme contravention of the Animals Protection Act. Obviously not clean and hygienic conditions. You can see the shade and shelter at the back. There's no environmental enrichment for those animals. And that's their drinking water, which we'll zoom into now. So again, you've got to stumble through all of those carcasses, the skeletons, and get to the drinking water, which is hardly fair for any animal. Here we're seeing conditions where carcasses were dragged in as a form of enrichment for lions, so they can tear the carcass apart and eat it. However, carcasses left like that, they're not on the cement slab or any other non-porous surface. So you're getting an incredible amount of bacteria buildup within the camp, which can lead to the animals suffering from issues from clostridial bacteria, for instance. Again, common issues, and this is one we are still seeing now, is camps not being cleaned. Sorry. So that was obviously a voiceover on those ones. But I think we got the gist of what our ex-colleague Priscilla was saying, was the amount of fecal buildup in the camps. Often the amount of lions doesn't determine how often, well, it should determine how often the camp's cleaned. So some SARPA regulations or guidelines state that a camp should be cleaned once a week. But if there's many animals and there's a lot of fecal buildup, you'd obviously have to clean it a lot more. These are, again, types of water. This is drinking water for animals, for captive lions and even tigers back then. These are issues that we found. We have also laid charges against this particular man who skipped the country. But you can see the fencing standards here. The fencing was dropping on the sides. We had no electrification, so lions could push straight through those wirings and feel nothing extra. Again, just a straight basics, the shelter conditions. We all know how hot zinc roofs get, and we've got what may be obese lions on the top, lying on top of it. And that's where we're also very careful in terms of our inspections. We understand that where an animal's been sterilized, that they are prone to gaining weight. So we will ask the relevant questions. Sorry, I don't know why that keeps happening. So here were just some of the instances that we dealt with back then. The lion on the top left was the same facility that we took charges against, laid charges against at Skip the Country. And these, again, we'll see in the very next slide. So it's not only the prey species that are suffering, but it's also where you're keeping your food for the animals. What you're going to see next is pretty severe. Onderstepoort veterinarians carried out a post-mortem on one of our cases. This case, fortunately, is going back to court. It will be heard in June, where they were able to slice through a bone with just a knife. They didn't have to use any bone saws or anything. And that just shows the acute dietary deficiencies that these animals were exposed to, which resulted in these conditions. There's a lot of big words there, which unfortunately I'm not a vet, so I can't explain in detail, but you can see it is severe. So what you just saw there is basically predator prey being put together. Although cheetah aren't commonly prey animals for lions, the lions will kill cheetah if they come upon them. In this instance here, this is another case in the northwest where this tiger lioness was mauled by her cage mate and simply left in the cage. I'm just hoping that there is no voiceover on this next slide because it's quite important. The tawny male that you'll see lying at the bottom left of the screen, this one. This is him in his environment. Watch the back leg. So when we asked the owner why that lion was still alive, why it hadn't been euthanized, he said, well, it can still breed, so it's good. Our follow-up inspection at that facility, we noticed that lion was gone, and we discovered the carcass with the Ladette officials in the freezer. And as you can see, there was massive bone callousing on that lion's leg. But it should have been addressed. This was his skin, and you can see if you look carefully, you'll see a lot of holes in that lion. That lion was ripped to pieces by the other lions, so suffered a horrendous death when he should have just been put down in the very beginning. I should have warned you that there is some gore. This is the case that we're also having in June, that we'll be back in court, where lions were I think we seized 12 carcasses and under warrant, and discovered that these lions at OP, after the post-mortem, discovered the lions had been brutally bludgeoned to death. Save a bullet, I don't know, but we just know that that is not the way to kill any animal. There were other photos, but we haven't put them on the slide. Again, the cub petting, that was all the rage. It still is in some parts, but those cubs are left to fend for themselves the majority of the time until paid volunteers, volunteerism comes into play, or tourists just come to visit the entity to come and visit, feed the cubs. This was a little lion cub that had been illegally taken through from Limpopo, and we discovered her in Durban. Her name was, we nicknamed her Nala. But you can see she was kept in a cat crate, and she suffered, those burns that you're seeing there are ammonia burns. She couldn't escape from her own urine. She lay in her feces and urine for weeks. And unfortunately, the catastrophic outcome. Another inspection at a Free State in the Free State, which we found dead cubs that were undeclared again. And again, nature conservation officials aren't informed timeously of the deaths or births at facilities. We spoke about this one. Obviously, we pick up a lot of illegal activity which doesn't always relate to animal cruelty, but there are often at facilities some dubious happenings, which is why we would like to have joint operations with conservation officials so that we can make sure that we get the strongest possible cases against those that are acting illegally. So a lot of it hasn't changed. As you can see, it's almost a cut and paste. Access back then to facilities still a challenge. The location of facilities was a challenge. A lot of these farms are not signposted. They look like your general domestic farmed animal farms. However, if you drive up into the farm itself, you will find that there are line camps and things. So we have to rely on Google Earth imagery to do a lot of our searches to look for camps. So information difficulties. And for us as an NGO and NPO, it's the access to affordable and prompt science. We've got specialist veterinarians, but they can't always be available to us. And I think when you're doing an inspection or a case and you don't have a specialist veterinarian or an expert in the field, we're always going to struggle when it gets to the prosecution process, because you then have an expert against an expert. And back then, this was the end of it. The weight of evidence against the captive lion industry has called for its closure, deemed irresponsible, inhumane, and an unsustainable practice. And fortunately, government has paid notice to that. And we're very appreciative that they have, because we have to get this closed. I do just have to mention as well that where a case doesn't get to court, or if we can't get a case to court and a nolle prosequi is issued, the NSPCA has earned the right to privately prosecute. So we can take a case on ourselves in a private capacity as the NSPCA. So we don't give up. If a case is declined, we will keep pushing. If we believe in the case and the case is merited, we will keep pushing that case right through till a private prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volhuter, for your presentations. And I know that we've kept you on the platform for quite some time. But I thought, for on the 24th of June, we are going to receive also presentations from the department. And henceforth, I thought that, your presentation from 2023 will come in quite handy for our honorable members.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Mr. Volter, how we normally do it, we now give members an opportunity to pose questions. Oh, I can see hands have gone up even before I have finished my sentence. I know, the presentations will spark quite a bit of debate, and I'll now recognize hands of honorable members. And then I do hope you do have your pen ready, Mr. Volter, because you will have to answer some of the questions that members will be posing, comments they will be making. Let me start by the first hand that I see. I see the hand of Dr. Managa, followed by Honorable De Block. Followed by Honorable Mkhize, followed by Honorable Makasi, followed by Honorable Kumalo. Are there any hands, Chileka, that I'm not able to see on my side?
Honorable Paulson, Chair.
Oh, Honorable Paulson, yes. You can follow Honorable Kumalo.
Yes.
Are those all the hands? I can't see on my side. I
Yes,
don't.
Chair. We've got 6 hands.
Okay, sure.
Honorable Managa, Honorable De Block, Honorable Mkhize, Honorable Makasi, Honorable Kumalo, and Honorable Paulson.
Okay, it's only showing me 4 hands, which is fine.
Okay.
We
I'll
will
note also from my side.
okay, we will proceed in that order. Honorable members, Dr. Managa, you can take the platform.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson. Let me take this moment and greet the colleagues, our officials, representatives from the DFFE, and reps from National Council of NSPCA. The issue of animal snaring, poaching, and cruelty of animal, either at home, in farms, in captivity, Chairperson, it's undoubtedly the most painful and difficult subject, I must say. Some of the photos that Mr. Douglas was showing, they were a bit scary for me. Yeah, though we must confront this issue head on. And I must say, Honorable Chairperson, I think it is essential that we engage meaningfully on this matter, particularly why the existing legislation meant to protect these animals are not being fully implemented. And the failure to act decisively is not only undermining the rule of law, but is also prolonging the suffering of those voiceless creatures that are entrusted to our care. Mr. Douglas, as the portfolio committee, we having serious concerns on the implementation of the high-level panel recommendations, especially on captive lion breeding, and we so wish to express our appreciation also for the efforts that the panel has undertaken. And we were lucky because last year in September, we managed to interact with the high-level panel, wherein they did share with us the recommendations, where the recommendation that they did were done in different phases. So we would like to find out, with all those recommendations that were made by the high-level panel, what is difficult for all of them to be implemented? What might be the reason? And we would also like to know how best can we assist you as the portfolio committee? Because as the National Council of NSPCA, you do have a statutory mandate to protect animal welfare. And you also have a unique capacity, like you have said in your presentation, to detect forms of cruelty or distress that may not be apparent to some of us as members of portfolio committee or to other bodies that may be entrusted with the responsibilities of making audits in those camps. So given this, are there current efforts to collaborate with other state departments or entities in conducting audits involving the animals? And what has been your experience regarding inclusion or exclusion from these audits? Specifically, who has restricted or prevented you from participation, and on what grounds? And lastly, Chairperson, what practical steps or policy recommendations would they suggest to us as portfolio committee to take to ensure that the council is systematically involved in such audits in future, so that the animal welfare concerns are not overlooked any longer? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Managa. Honorable De Block, you may take the platform.
Thank you very much, Acting Chair. I'd like to start by welcoming the presentation from Mr. Wallater and the NSPCA. And I hope that we have a long and very fruitful relationship with the organization throughout our term on various issues. Excellent presentations, thank you. Also upfront, I'd like to say that animal welfare, in particular captive breeding of lions, and I'll include other big cats, is an issue that this committee was exposed to early on, as Dr. Managa said. And it's something that we've been seized with and enjoys unilateral support across the political parties. So I think this is a very fertile ground for things to move and to change for the better. I also acknowledge that we are standing on the shoulders of others who did a lot of work before us, the previous administration, the previous portfolio committee, the previous minister, Minister Creasy, who set up the high-level panel and the task team, and now with the new administration, the new portfolio committee, and Minister George and his department taking forward the recommendations. So this is a long process, an exhaustive process, and one that has support of this committee. Also, just upfront to remind my colleagues that this is a practice that provides very few jobs and contributes negligibly to transformation in South Africa, but obviously has a huge negative contribution to South Africa's reputation internationally in terms of ethical hunting, animal cruelty, and even tourism. So, you know, there are moral, economic, and judicial reasons to follow through on these recommendations of the ministerial task team and the high-level panel. And we are working against a well-funded and well-organized lobby opposing this, but I think we need to be steadfast in our commitment to phasing this out. Mr. Wallater, there was an audit performed as part of the ministerial task team's efforts, and it was reported on in their report. And I believe it's going to be the subject of a scientific paper also published soon, so it'll be peer-reviewed and openly available in the African Journal of Wildlife Research, which is very good news. But I noted that you also called for an audit, and I wondered, is this a follow-up audit? Were you unhappy with the audit that was carried out by the MTT? Was it insufficient? And I would also like to, I read through the ministerial task team's report, and there's a section that says, the NSPCA were willing to provide the number of lions from their welfare compliance inspection reports after they received legal advice, but a data sharing memorandum of understanding could not be secured timeously from the DFFE. So it sounds like the MTT's audit was stymied or slowed by, I don't know what bad blood or logistical issues there were between the MTT, the department, and the NSPCA, but perhaps a comment from you on why data sharing was such an issue, if such an audit is such an important item on your to-do list. The presentations only provided statistics of inspections from the NSPCA for 2022, and I presume there have been subsequent inspections. You talked to some of them. So will we be apprised of the results for 23, 24, 25? I'm just interested to know why those inspections weren't included. I think the frustration about the slow timelines of implementation is understandable. I think we also need to be reasonable in taking the interests of the breeders into account. They were operating under what were and currently are, in many cases, legal situations or contexts. They have economies built up around this, and they need to be given a chance to phase out. So I support the minister in his voluntary exit pathways that he has set up, the moratorium on new facilities, which seems to have been a success, and the voluntary buying up of lion bone stockpiles. And I do trust that the further recommendations of the panels will be enacted in a phased fashion. But I do appreciate that your opinion is it's taking too long. I just want to know, is there a way that the NSPCA, the provincial authorities, the minister, or the department can force the closure of facilities that have multiple transgressions or especially egregious transgressions? You've shown us quite a few that you found in your inspections, and there's a lot that the ministerial task team also unearthed. Why are these non-compliance incidents not being investigated, and why are facilities not closed down when these are found, or suspended, or their licenses revoked, and who has the authority to do that? I don't know why animals haven't been confiscated from these facilities, why they haven't had their licenses revoked, etc. So a comment on that, please. I agree absolutely on the slow justice system and that being an impediment. I put a parliamentary question a couple of weeks ago to the Minister of Justice about the Skukuza courthouse. There were reports in the media about some less than ideal circumstances there, and that courthouse being under threat. And I absolutely agree. We can't let that court fail, because we need, as you say, wildlife specific courts in South Africa, specialized courts to handle these kinds of cases. And I agree that the fines, I mean, 4,000 or 5,000 rand is less than a slap on the wrist. So that Animals Protection Act does need to be looked at again, I think, especially in terms of penalty provisions. And I'll come back to that point in a second. I did want to ask the department, but perhaps the DDG, to respond to the statement that the Wellbeing Forum are not allowed to access the Wildlife Forum as observers or to get minutes or anything like that. But the Wildlife Forum has those privileges when it comes to attending or being privy to the Wellbeing Forum. That seems like a lopsided relationship. So please could the department respond to that? I do appreciate that they are going to give a presentation in a few weeks' time, but that should be something they have an answer to at hand. Madam Secretary, please just make sure you get the 2023 presentation and circulate it to the committee, because I would like to scrutinize that a bit more. I'd like to ask why, or is there a microchipping or stud book system for big cats in captivity? And if not, why not? It should be certainly easy then to, for instance, track which animals are being exported to zoos overseas, which ones are being hunted in captive lion hunting, or canned hunting, as some people call it, which ones are being used to breed. I appreciate there's now something like 8,000 lions in the captive system, but this should be, if it's not already a system, why isn't a system? The issue of snaring, it's particularly cruel. I've been on snare clearances in the Kruger National Park, and I'm aware of what an issue it is along those boundaries. I've also been involved in Tlhlu and Falozi, where it's also an epidemic, basically. We do need to find ways to deal with this better, and it goes down to a community approach. I think you can have all the legislation in the world, but unless you talk to communities and get their buy-in, you're never going to get this right. That's more of a comment than anything else. But yeah, it is particularly cruel, and thank you for the presentations and the gory photographs. The Animal Protection Act, I was looking at it while you were presenting, and the definition of animal says any equine, bovine, sheep, goat, pig, fowl, ostrich, dog, cat, or other domestic animal or bird, or any wild animal, wild bird, or reptile which is in captivity or under the control of any person. I'm just wondering if that definition has been tried in court when it comes to non-captive wildlife, because my non-legal expert reading of that doesn't include wildlife, which is a huge gap, if that is the case. Also, the designated minister for this act is the Minister of Justice, not the Minister of FFE, which is another potential loophole or concern. So perhaps, acting chair, our committee chair should perhaps contact her counterpoint in the Justice Portfolio Committee to invite the NSPCA to talk to the Animal Protection Act and its shortcomings, including the need for an expanded definition of animal, the penalties that I talked about for offences, and other issues, because it seems to fall outside of our committee's remit, actually. And perhaps the chair could also encourage the Justice Portfolio chair to call on their minister to review the animal welfare and management law across the provinces, because I'm very concerned to hear the differences in the ordinances in terms of how they legislate keeping animals and the requirements thereof and the movement thereof. That is a huge mess at the moment when it comes to captive animals, and that seems like something the justice portfolio should be wrestling with. The Constitution does obligate us that we have reasonable legislative protection for the environment. So if there are gaps in terms of the Animal Protection Act, the Animal Welfare Bill, currently being led by the Department of Agriculture, presents a potential opportunity to address some of these gaps. So I want to know from the department, are you taking notes on these presentations? Are you having meetings with the NSPCA and others and taking these suggestions to the Department of Agriculture and making sure that these are included and covered in the Animal Welfare Bill? Because of course, it makes sense the Department of Agriculture oversees domestic animals, but we have huge concerns about the legislative protection of wild animals and our environment, our natural and wild environments, non-captive animals included in that. So I would like a response from the department just to clarify their role in drafting that bill and whether these will be covered. And then perhaps a last question from me, because I've been on the floor for probably over my time. Again, the department, why the downgrade from norms and standards to guidelines for damage-causing animals? We've had the Moana elephant issue before us. And thankfully for those elephants, there are norms and standards for elephants that have guided the management thereof. And I think if we just had guidelines instead of norms and standards in that instance, those elephants would have been killed long ago without the non-lethal solutions being mandated to be attempted at least before we consider lethal options. So from that example, I think the committee can see the value of stricter and enforceable norms and standards above just guidelines. So perhaps a response from the department on why they are considering downgrading those regulations. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable De Blok. Honorable Mkhize.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Greetings to honorable members. I would also like to take this opportunity to greet everyone on this platform. Thank you, Mr. Douglas, for the wonderful presentation that you gave us and also a touching one. I have just few remarks. Honorable De Blok have already covered me some of the points that I was going to raise. My recommendation is with regards to the high-level panel priorities. I'll suggest that the department, together with the NSPCA, look into the matter of community involvement and rural economy, which is missing in their presentation. Then I would like to ask a few questions here. What percentage of the plus of minus 300 captive lions facilities have been audited? How many lions and skeletons were verified, and when will the full audit report reach Parliament? My second question is, how many breeding cap interactions or bond trade permits have been issued or renewed since January 2021, despite high-level panels call for an immediate moratorium? With the case of the snaring remains one of the most cruel and indiscriminate poaching methods. Although the Animal Protection Act of 71 of 1962 criminalizes any trap that causes unnecessary suffering, I think the department also needs to look into provincial ordinances who still authorize snares, which set up permits at the look of things that direct conflicts with national law, Section 24 of the Constitution. I think the uniformity of applying law in our country will need to be obtained. Finally, I think DFFE together with NSPCA will need to discuss and find ways of legislative amendments to raise penalties under the Animal Protection Act. After our courts imposes fines as low as 4,000 or 5,000 to people who have committed such crimes, I think there needs to be more harsh than what they are receiving. I mean, the legislature it needs to be made stronger so that people who are doing these crimes will know that they will pay heavily by committing into such crimes. For now, let me end there. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhize. Honorable Makasi.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to welcome the presentation done by Mr. Douglas, who has a difficult surname. Don't want to even attempt pronouncing it. Chair, in the presentation, I think I would ask it as he has presented to the meeting with the different presentations that he has done. I would like to check what are the terms of reference of the MTT and what have been some of the key findings and recommendations from this. And is there any time frame set to action these recommendations, and how far is the implementation process to date? And are there any notable challenges? And then what work is being done to address the misalignment with global conservation trends, questionable tourism practices, inadequate regulation, and persistent animal welfare, amongst other issues? And what is the national quota for the exporting of lion bones? And what informs that quota, and how do they deal with illegal trade of lion bones? Also, there seems to be misalignment between the intended action plan and the actual actions. So can he elaborate on why this is the case? This is based on what is shown on slide 6. Chair, on snaring, how are they reconciling the contradictions that exist between provincial ordinances, which allow snaring, and existing legislation, which prohibits any animal cruelty and activity that inflicts suffering of animals? Noting that one of the side effects on animals that survive snaring is psychological trauma, does this ever cause aggression to an extent that they become a danger to other animals or humans after such an incident? And Chair, on the last slide that you presented, I want to check how many captive lion facilities are in the country, and how many have they inspected since the 75 that he mentioned in 2022 to date? How do they handle cases where non-compliance is as a result of limited resources and funds to buy things such as food, or hire more people to assist with keeping the farm hygienic and provide a veterinary care? And how is this mitigated? And then what is the general fine on average for non-compliance, and in instances where animals escape and harm residents due to inadequate infrastructure, as you mentioned? How is that addressed and or dealt with? And can you also elaborate more on the challenges that he mentioned in one of the slides, specifically on access to facilities, the location of the facilities, and information difficulties? And what does it think should be done in that case? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Makasi. Honorable Kumalo.
Hey, nayo-ke lento, Chair. Yo, Chairperson.
Honorable Kumalo.
Chair, I'm trying to log in.
Oh, you were speaking, I don't know, I could not understand you. Jy moet verstaan, ek is Afrikaans sprekend. So, ons gaan nie mekaar verstaan as ons nie Engels praat nie. What I'm trying to say is we don't,
Chair.
we will not understand each other. So let us speak English because we all have a different language. Remember, we are blessed with so many languages in the country.
Chairperson, do you hear me?
I hear you, Honorable Kumalo. You can proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Douglas, for the presentation. Chair, I want also to join my colleagues that have welcomed the presentation. I also welcome the presentation. It is well structured, and also the photos give us an indication to understand what we are dealing with. But I'm having some few questions, Chair, that I want to pose. One, what are the disparities you have noted, Mr. Douglas, in the regulation of Wildlife Forum? What are the terms of reference for the DFFE appointed task teams? Can you please explain what you mean by this statement? No matter the standard, we cannot condone the lack of enrichment for the predators in captivity. What were the offenses committed by Mr. Hertklassen and Professor Mashihlelo, which resulted in mentioned convictions? Chair, what will be your recommendations, Mr. Klassen, on how we can deal with the non-compliance with NEMBA and TOPS regulations, including the APA, as highlighted in the presentation? Who is responsible for the negligence of leaving high-scheduled drugs in the open without veterinarian on site? What possible danger could be inflicted by this act, and what consequence management in place for such behavior? Chairperson, on slide number 2, I want just to check here. Can Mr. Douglas give an example of a case where poor penalties were handed in relation to snaring, in conjunction with what you would consider a fair penalty? That will be my question, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kumalo. Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to the department and the SPCA. And thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Voliter. I noticed people struggled with your surname. Mr. Voliter, given the SPCA's broad mandate, which is to prevent cruelty and promote humane treatment of all living creatures, and I would imagine that the numerous challenges you face when it comes to regulating and addressing issues within the captive animal industry, particularly lions in South Africa, that you have some serious human resource challenges. So I'd like to know how has the prevailing economic downturn in South Africa impacted the SPCA's funding efforts and overall operational capabilities? And also, in what ways is the SPCA actively involved in the development and review of national standards for animal welfare? And specifically, your work on animal welfare standards. And what specific challenges have you faced as the SPCA in the development of these new animal welfare standards, such as captive lion breeding, or the revision of existing standards? And how do you engage with legislative processes, such as finalizing comments on bills related to animal welfare, to ensure that animal welfare considerations are effectively integrated into national policy? And then lastly, how does the recently enacted well-being clause in the National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Act, NEMLA, which stems from a landmark legal case regarding the lion bone trade, how does this provide a new avenue for the National Council of SPCAs to advocate for animal welfare? Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you very much once again for the presentation and also for the work that you do.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson. I see Honorable Peach. I assume you had technical issues earlier on because we did not see your hand. But you may proceed, Honorable Peach.
Thank you very much, Acting Chair. My apologies. I was having some technical difficulty, but I'll be very brief. I wanted to make a couple of statements. I think, firstly, I just want to commend and thank Mr. Voliter for the very difficult work that he and his team at the SPCA does on a daily basis. This is work that is incredibly important and also very, very traumatizing. And he needs as much support as we can afford him. And secondly, I want to make the statement in saying that South Africa is world-renowned as a conservation leader through a process of sustainable utilization and economic development of its natural resources, but doing so in a very sensitive way to promote conservation. And we've seen this through activities such as wildlife breeding of endangered species, as well as the intensive ranching of wildlife on game farms, specifically for ecotourism, but as well as for hunting. However, the activities that Mr. Voliter has shown us today is not something to be commended at all. This is a complete breakdown of these economic paradigms and is juxtaposed to the concept of conservation and of the correct animal stewardship, which South Africa has become world-renowned for. I would like to just hear from the SPCA, specifically in regards to the regulations that should be monitored from provincial departments. In my opinion, every time the SPCA finds a mismanaged or situation where animals are mistreated in a specific way, it indicates a lack of regulation and a failure of the provincial government's responsibilities in managing those animals. I would like to find out, how does the SPCA hold not only provincial departments but also national departments accountable for failures to regulate many of these, let's call them commercial activities, specifically surrounding the predator breeding industry. Madam Acting Chair, I would also like to request that we be given a full presentation by the various provincial departments into their own management of these activities, so that we can better understand their own shortcomings and their active kind of management strategies in this regard. And then finally, I just wanted to speak about the scourge of snaring and of poaching. I believe that this is a clear indication of the economic hardships that our communities in our areas surrounding our conservation areas are going through, and that they are driven into criminality due to their economic hardships. I believe that it would be a much more successful strategy in trying to address these economic issues within these communities, so as to highlight the value of conservation, not only as a job creator, but also as a potential community growth factor. I've seen many instances where NGOs has focused on providing protein and meat to communities to alleviate the driver towards the bushmeat trade. And I think these are activities that we need to look at, not only from a community enrichment perspective, but also from a animal management tool in this regard. Thank you very much, Jay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Peach. Honorable Paulson, is that a legacy hand?
My apologies, yes, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson. I'll now ask Mr. Voluter to please interact with some of the questions that were posed to him. Mr. Voluter, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my apologies that my surname is difficult. It's Walleter, just like a wallet that you put money in and an ER on the end.
Oh, Walleter.
Walleter, yes.
I thought it was German.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, there were a lot of questions there. So I'm hoping we got them all. The one was from the high-level panel about the difficulties of the recommendations being implemented. And are there entities that assist where we've asked for assistance? And how it's restricted us as inspectors. So the high-level panel recommendations is difficult to implement, because straight off the bat, like one of the other honourable ministers said, these are legal. They were opened legally, so they were trading legally, and that we've got to change that. And the government, well, the NEMBA and the NEMA also allow for that sort of change. So it is going to be a long and exhaustive process. We know that, but we need to put something in place in the interim, because we can't have these consistent welfare issues. And when I'm not sure if this was your question about audits. Oh, sorry. Okay, so then if I haven't answered the question, please, because there were so many I was writing and my writing is terrible. So you also spoke about the collaboration between state departments, the inclusion or exclusion of the NSPCA. So we do try and collaborate with state departments. recently we've had some really good results from that, and we're hoping to extend those relationships. We also do know the constraints on the environmental departments as well in terms of capacity and funding. So I think we're all sharing singing from the same sort of hymn book at times. Then there was, we'll address the audits that came up. We'll address that came up in the next question, I think. Yes, from Honourable de Block. Where you talked about the captive commercial industry and how it's damaging Brand SA. The MTT did carry out an audit. And just sorry, I'm just getting to my notes. And what their audit basically was over was, so there was 7,800 captive lions in 348 facilities, over 3,000 lion skeletons and carcasses, and they mentioned between 1,500 and to just over 2,000 employees that are in the captive lion industry. None of that was focused on welfare. And in terms of the Animals Protection Act, an audit must be done, but also in the terms of welfare, with well-being as part and parcel of conservation. Now, it means more and more just for us to get involved and do audits that actually encompass the animal and focus on the animal welfare aspect. And I do look forward to the scientific paper that comes out, and hopefully we'll have access to that. The data sharing between the DFFE and the NSPCA, it does come to a halt at times. And at one stage, there was an MOU that was being considered. Unfortunately, I cannot recall quite why that never passed near the end of it, but it is something that we've recently been in discussions with the Compliance and Enforcement Department of the DFFE again over, so that we can work together better. When it comes to the closure of the industries, for the stats from 23 to 25, I will have to consider what we can release, but we have obviously got figures for those years as well, which we can share once I have permission. With regarding to the closure of the facilities and what happens to the animals, though, in every single one of our cases, it's up to the magistrate to deny ownership of an animal, and we request denial of ownership in all our dockets. So whether the magistrate grants us the denial of ownership or prevents the person from owning an animal or being in possession of an animal for a set period of time, I think the longest we've had is 5 years for a domestic dog, then we can act on that. But further to that, only in terms of a warrant can we remove an animal that's in such a condition that if we left it wouldn't be able to survive. So the warrants allow us to remove, but they don't give us the power to close an industry. The department would need, so where there's multiple infringements, that's where we need the collaboration between nature conservation and us, because nature conservation grant the permits. And so where there's contraventions of animal welfare, we need to collaborate with nature conservation to close those and not reissue permits.
Divorced when I was young. I moved around a lot trying to find stability. Eventually, I ended up staying.
Khumalo, is it possible to mute yourself, please? You may proceed, Mr. Wallater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to get my bearings again. On Honourable Mkhize's question, I think it was legislative, what percentage of lions and skeletons and how many breeding permits have been renewed or issued? Was that Honourable Mkhize? Can you confirm if that's correct?
Sorry. Oh, you said my question, but what percentage of the plus of minus 300 captive lions facilities have been audited? How many lions and skeletons were verified? And when will the full audit report reach Parliament? That was the first question. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mkhize. Yeah, so the MTT's audit did take place, and they have currently established 7,834 captive lions in 348 facilities and 3,163 lion skeletons and carcasses in stockpiles. So that speaks to one aspect of the MTT's audit. The audit that I'm referring to is one that would have to and should be including animal welfare and working with the department on that. We don't know since 2021 how many permits have been renewed or issued when this first came to light. So we would be reliant on the provinces and national to give us those figures. Sorry, then I think we've got, sorry, just trying to get through here. So, sorry, there was also a question about the national quota for lion bone export. I think the honourable ministers are aware that the South African Predator Association have challenged the Minister George and the department on not issuing a lion bone quota in terms of what they claim as CITES requirements are. The NSPCA, we have actually intervened because we weren't cited as a party, even though it was our judgment with the lion bone export quota that brought about the end of that. So the minister will be supporting the DFFE in opposing the issuing of a quota because it cannot be done. The provisions of the judgment of the lion bone export case, the provisions of that case, the judgment have not been met. Then you had how many lions in terms of compliance where there's limited, I think it was your question, with limited funds, vet care, and how is that mitigated? When it comes to that, if there's limited funds, the farmers are very, very welcome to surrender their lions to us. We'll find places for them. If not, we will. We've got a euthanasia process, which SOP for lions, but it would be obviously something we'd have to do in conjunction with the province and national. But where animals are suffering and the owner has not got the ability to care for them, the better option is to euthanize at this stage, because a lot of the sanctuaries are already full, and those that aren't full are still bringing animals in from international destinations like Ukraine and stuff, and rescuing animals that way. So our South African lions have got very few places to go to. And we wouldn't be able to find places for all of them. That is something that I think the high-level panel and the task team have taken up to look at. When it comes to escaping and harming people or property, that's actually covered in terms of the Animal Matters Amendments Act, not the Animals Protection Act. So it's more of a civil case where the person that's been offended, you could say, or injured, they have to then claim back through the courts through the Animals Matters Amendments Act. The animal itself, though, that attacked the person, if it is an attack, would most likely be euthanized as a damage-causing animal in terms of conservation legislation. I think I'm trying to read my own writing. There's something about information on facilities. Asking about the information, why we would battle with information on facilities. And it boils down to a fact that we haven't got the collaboration that we really truly need with nature conservation departments, which is something we have to work on as collaboratively as possible, because a lot of these facilities, like I said, it looks like a standard farm road, and only once you travel those roads do you then find those facilities. So the registered facilities everyone knows about. We're actually currently investigating a private person that's got a possession of lions that doesn't have a permit for them. So when you're looking at the registered facilities and the information there, yes, you can get that from permits and records, but the amount of illegal keeping of animals is also got to be addressed, especially when you look at tigers being in people's backyards, and we know of lions now that are also being kept illegally. So that's where the facility information difficulties come in. So then, Honourable Khumalo, thank you. You spoke of the disparities in the regulation between the Wildlife Forum and the task teams. So the task teams were, as much as I know, appointed by the Minister to handle the well-being aspect. And the Wildlife Forum is there to look at, I guess, optimizing trade in wildlife. So if you look at the two, they seem very far apart, where you've got industry looking to optimize their sales and keeping of animals, and the Wildlife Wellbeing Forum who's cared about the actual welfare and well-being of the animal. So it's not only how the animal dies, it's how it lives, and also the means and how it dies. So there is that kind of a I think that's the biggest gap between the two forums. And however, if it's only one-way traffic, then how will we ever collaborate and get the welfare of the animals as well as the optimization of your trade looked at and considered? When it came to the also the lack of enrichment in one of the slides. So lack of enrichment leads to boredom in animals. And that we've seen from animals displaying stereotypic behavior. They can become either extremely aggressive, extremely tame. They show extra pacing, circling behaviors. They show general depression. So the lack of enrichment has a catastrophic influence on the animal's behavior and its psyche. So that's why when we have a lack of enrichment, we have a problem, because it is a welfare problem. Even in the zoos, when we do inspections at zoos, we always ask them, what enrichment are you giving those animals to keep them from being bored? Because there you'll even see it with the primates, where they start plucking their own hair. So it's a range of things, but self-mutilation is also one of those aspects, where an animal will keep digging at a saw or something on its body to make a saw and carry on at that. With respect to the Gert Claassen and the professor with their judgments, I think it would be best that I circulate that to the secretary with the judgment, just so that everyone can see exactly what they were charged for and what the outcomes are, because they are public. They are a matter of public record now. So I'd rather circulate that than speak off the cuff. When it comes to the high scheduled drugs that are being kept, where a vet should be keeping them, like the ketamine. I mean, ketamine's been used by people as a narcotic for many years, illegally so. That falls more under the Medicines Control Council. And obviously the vet that's issued the medicine to be kept at the facility. So in terms of those provisions, they'd have to go to those separate departments or separate entities. So the South African Vet Council would be involved for the vet that's issued the drugs, and then Medicines Control Council because of the drugs that are being kept illegally and not in a good in the state it should be. So when it came to examples of snaring offences and fines, it's a difficult one to answer offhand because they're mostly the anonymous crimes. And I'm pretty sure we could find a society that has had a successful conviction, and I will ask. But normally it's an anonymous crime, which people aren't there to take account for. So that's something that we will look at, and if we can find the figures, we'll get back to you. Yeah, and of course, it would depend on the magistrate of the district as well, whether he deems it a lesser crime and institutes. I mean, we've had, for instance, I had a teacher that dragged a dog behind a car for 1.5 kilometers, and he was only fined 1,500 rand. So it really does depend on the magistrate and the district. With Honourable Paulson, the NSPCA with our mandate. So yes, we do have human resources challenges. I think I've spoken throughout about nature conservation's lack of capacity. We also have a lack of capacity, and we do what we can where we can. We're busy building very strong teams, and we're upskilling our inspectors on a consistent basis, so that even an inspector from, say, the farm animal unit can carry out inspections at a lion facility. So we are upskilling ourselves consistently, so that when we're in the area, we maximize potential. So we maximize economy of the trip. With the funding, the finance and operation capabilities, I think we're no different to many other organizations where we are struggling with consistent funding. And that does play an important role, because a lot of the funding that we can receive is international funding. But locally, there's few opportunities because there are so many NPOs and NGOs that are all looking to get a slice of that same pie. So each slice gets smaller. We also do comment on SANS codes. Our Farm Animal Protection Unit is the unit that's most commonly involved with SANS codes, and that relates to ostrich farming, crocodile farming, dairy, so pork. So there's a lot of SANS codes we are involved with there. And with us, sorry, I just want to check the last question. How do I comment on legislation? And so the comment on legislation. So when we do obviously add comments when they're circulated to the public for public comment, and we submit as a statutory entity. We'll submit comments for any policy, regulation, or legal change. And our sorry, I just want to see if I've answered everything there. The well-being clause and NEMLA. So obviously that was brought about mostly through the lion bone trade that we challenged and won that High Court judgment. So I can only say that there has to be a collaborative effort between the different departments of DELROD and the DFFE, because well-being would become a shared mandate. We're also aware that the well-being definition is being challenged in court by the SA Hunters group, and I can say that we have also joined in and caused us to be enjoined to that case because we were cited in the papers, but we weren't actually enjoined to the trial. So we are part of that case, and we'll be supporting the stance on the well-being clause because we believe the correct processes were followed. Okay, so then Honourable Peach, I'm just sorry, I just want to see where. So I think your questions were based on sustainable utilization, economic development in a sensitive way, and I think we've also got to. So we understand those provisions of sustainable conservation or sustainable utilization. However, we've got to be very careful of not falling into the trap that sustainable utilization becomes farmed wildlife, because we've got a reputation, as you said, as world leaders in conservation. So we don't want to be coming across as all our wildlife are busy being domesticated. So sustainable utilization in terms of an offtake, a cull, in those aspects, because there are a natural overpopulation, yeah, then absolutely, then sustainable use can work. I just want to see. So there was, I'm so sorry, I was writing way too fast for my hand to keep up. Oh, you're talking about the sense branching. Oh, then it was about the regulation between the provincial departments and the lack of regulations, and how we held accountable for failures in the predator breeding facilities, and that we can only do through the Animals Protection Act. The lack of regulations, where it comes to a legal process, we're not shy to take on anything in a legal aspect, a legal framework. And I don't really know how to say that we could enable a transition between those regulations that failing animals, apart from keeping it at our mandate and enforcing the Animals Protection Act. I do have to also agree with you, Honourable Peachy, about the economic hardships being one of the major drivers for snaring. There is, however, a very large syndicate of poaching that is going on, and I think we can see it from the loss in rhino numbers, and we've got to consider that if the percentage of rhinos, of rhinos is dropping year by year that are being poached, we've got to consider the pool of animals that are left that can be poached. So those sort of become relative as well.
Hi.
Okay, Malo, please mute yourself.
So I don't know if I've left anyone out. If one of the honourable members could let me know if there was something that I need to expand on or I've missed, please will you let me know? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walata. I see there's one hand raised by Honourable De Block. Honourable De Block, may I take the platform?
Thank you, Acting Chair. Yes, Mr. Auditor, I asked about a stud book and microchipping of animals, if you could respond to that. And then Acting Chair, I also asked for responses from the department if those can be forthcoming afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable De Block. So there again, we've got your provincial regulations that are different for each province. So I know the Western Cape are very very good about getting microchips done. Other provinces, it's almost on a if you feel like do it basis. The stud books, we're not really aware of. We haven't seen any stud books that have been kept for breeding purposes. We know the South African Predator Association claimed to have stud books, but so would our National Zoological Gardens. I would imagine Sandy would be keeping stud books of some sort because of the reserves that they live on. So yeah, that's all I can really answer there. It's that the microchipping is if you want to, you can in most provinces.
Thank you, Mr. Wallet. I see there's
So
one
yeah,
hand.
it's something that you're
You may continue, Mr. Wallet. I just acknowledge that there's one more hand by Honorable Peach.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. No, it basically for us it boils down to that each nature conservation entity has their own set of rules, and that's where things also go wrong because we know through other groups' research and active hiring that microchips are often reused. So you'll get a number that's reused for purposes of trade. Microchips are recorded bought in and just kept in the numbers used from a shelf. We've had an incident just this last week where we've had to request assistance from compliance and enforcement in tracing chip numbers, which don't seem to exist. So it is something that really does need to be looked at because it would stop the movement of lions in a not so legal fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallet. Honorable Peach.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to get clarity from Mr. Voliter. The conservation entities within the provinces, has there been any prosecutions due to their own lack of regulation enforcement? Are there cases? Has there been any prosecutions in this regard with them failing to actually act within their mandate? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Peach. Mr. Wallet.
Thank you. There hasn't. There is, unfortunately, possibly one in the pipeline where we have been looking at that. And yeah, I can't say too much more than that for now because it's a case we're considering. But at the end of the day, nature conservation also has a duty of care. Even if they don't believe it's their mandate, they have a duty of care in terms of the Animals Protection Act to take the best decision for that animal. As the Lionbone judgment stated, it effectively made it that no official can take a decision over an animal without considering its welfare. And that's sadly just a case that we've had very, very recently, which resulted in the death of an animal from stress, and one in which we had advised 2 weeks prior that it should be euthanized. So we are considering charges against the entity. And we'll continue to do so going forward. If there are contraventions, then we'll unfortunately have to take on the provincial entities.
Thank you, Mr. Wallet. Honorable Peach, is that a legacy hand?
Yes, Chair, I've covered. Thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you so much. I would just like to, from the Portfolio Committee side, Mr. Wallet, just thank you for, a really informed presentation. And, I think all of us, we were very much enriched by the information that you have presented to us today. So I would like to just put the following recommendations forward, which is, by the DFFE will be holding a meeting on the 24th of June with the Department of Agriculture. And there they should reflect on the recommendations by the NSPCA for implementation of the high-level panel report, as well as the snaring matter, particularly regarding the identified legislative weaknesses, the guidelines versus norms and standards on snaring, and the reciprocal access to information between the DFFE and the NSPCA. A letter should also be written to the Portfolio Committee on Justice to hold a briefing with the NSPCA on the justice system's impacts on wildlife crimes and prosecutions. And then the DFFE and NSPCA should look at including, the communities that are affected. The NSPCA to provide Parliament with the updated audit report of captive lion facilities in 2 weeks to help the committee to prepare for the meeting on the 24th of June, as well as the two judgments to be shared with the Portfolio Committee. There should be a legislative review to have harsher and hefty penalties on the Animal Protection Act, and the committee should be briefed by the provincial departments on how they manage captive animals. So that would be the recommendations for our meeting today. And once again, Mr. Wallater, and now I'm pronouncing your name correctly, your surname correctly. And I just mentioned to one of the colleagues here on the platform that she was actually the clever one to say Mr. Douglas instead of mispronouncing your surname like the most of us have mispronounced your surname. But thank you very much for having graced us with your presence. And we do hope that we will see, tangible outcomes, and where you do not have to come and present again to us, in the future, an old presentation, and that where you have stated that the 2023 presentation that nothing much have changed, but that we do hope that in the future things would have changed. Thank you so much, Mr. Wallater. You may now leave the platform, because we are just going to deal with some in-house issues as the Portfolio Committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, honourable members. Goodbye.
Honourable De Block.
Thanks, Chair. Just a point of clarity, are the department going to respond to the few questions I asked, or are we going to get those responses in their next presentation?
Let me just see who from the department is here. Let me just see the list of delegations. I see there are quite a number of people from the department here. We have the DDG here, we have 2 CDs, we have 3 directors. May I ask, Ms. Flora, is it possible for you to interact with a question?
Thanks, Chairperson. Good morning to you. Before I say something, I do note that you have requested the NSPCA to leave the room, but I do note that there are attendees of the meeting that are not members of the Portfolio Committee, because I had understood you to say that we have to deal with in-house issues. I don't know if you're going to deal with that also, or you're allowing them to be present, Chairperson? Before I respond.
Ms. Flora, they're allowed to be present as soon as you have answered Honourable De Block and is satisfied with the answer. Then we will then continue with our in-house duties. And then you may all leave the platform. May continue, Ms. Flora.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I need to indicate that we have noted all the questions and all the issues that NSPCA has raised. We have and are preparing for the meeting of the 24th of June, which will comprehensively respond to all the issues as has been raised, including the concerns from NSPCA and the questions from the honorable members. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Ms. Flora. Honorable the block, as you've seen, we will be receiving that presentation on the 24th when we will have, the department there to come and present to us. Are you
Thank you,
satisfied?
Chair, and thank you to the DDG for that response, and I look forward to the next presentation on the 24th. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Honorable the block. Chileka, you may flight our minutes.
All right, Chair, I'll do so quickly. I'm using two devices, so the other one, it says I've disabled my screen sharing. Just a minute, honorable members, apologies for this.
Okay, Chileka.
There we go. I've removed the other device. Okay, members, we are going to adopt two sets of minutes, but you may recall that we had two meetings in April when we were dealing with the APPs and the strat plans. So after those two meetings, we prepared minutes and a report as we are required to do so. But now we were told to stop that process as the departments were told to reintroduce their APPs. So for now, we are waiting for the department to indicate whether they will retable their APPs and strat plans. So that is why we didn't bring those two sets of minutes of the 22nd and the 23rd. So if they are not going to brief us on the 17th or the 18th, then we will adopt those two sets of minutes. So for today, it's the minutes of the 13th and the 20th. So shall I proceed, Chair?
You may proceed, Chileka.
Okay, so 13th of May, we were briefed by the two metros, Tshwane, Joburg, and Mangaung, but we'll recall that Joburg, we could not take responses from them due to time constraints. And then go to the attendance by the members, officials, opening remarks and by the chairperson, just a summary of that. And then the apologies that we received on that day, adoption of the agenda, the highlights of the presentation by the City of Tshwane. Dr. Malaka led the presentation for that day. And then these were the questions that were raised by the members. I'm not sure, members will guide me if they need to make amendments. And then I'll go to responses, Chair.
You may proceed, Chileka.
Oh,
Members will indicate on
yeah.
correctness of minutes. Yeah, members will indicate to us on correctness of minutes. So you may
Okay.
proceed.
All right. Still on the responses. And then we're going to the second presentation, Chair, Seat of Mangaung. Those were the highlights of their presentation. And then the discussions and questions from members. And these are the responses, Chair. And then the briefing by the City of Joburg. Ms. Mchali presented on behalf of the City of Joburg. Highlights of the presentation. Unfortunately, we could not pose questions to them. And then when they came also, they were going to brief us on the 27th, but then that meeting was postponed. And then, Chair, these are the resolutions. So in terms of the written responses, I did remind them last week. So they were still busy with the responses and they promised to submit by end of this week. And then the meeting adjourned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chileka. Honorable members, I've not noted any hands yet in terms of correctness of minutes. Are we all in agreement that the minutes are correct, honorable members? Before I move for the adoption of the minutes. Honorable Kumalo. Honorable Kumalo, you may proceed. Honorable Kumalo, you can unmute yourself.
Chair, can I move for the correctness of the minutes? That the minutes are correct and they are actually entailing what was discussed on the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Makasi. Honorable Kumalo. I think she's experiencing technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, honorable members. Now we're going to move for the adoption of the minutes of the 13th of May. And we need a person who will duly second the adoption. Can I see hands, honorable members? If honorable members are in agreement that the minutes are correct, then we should move for the adoption of the minutes. I see I have a mover, Honorable De Block.
Yes, Chair, I move.
Thank you, Honorable De Block. Is there a seconder for Honorable De Block?
I second him, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Makasi. Chileka, you may move to the second set of minutes.
Chair, the next set is for the meeting of the 20th of May. We were briefed by the eThekwini Metro and Nelson Mandela, and we were also briefed, I forgot the gentleman's name now, from Mawana community, the DFFE, the province, and Ezemvelo. They presented on that day on the Mawana Game Reserve matter. And then those are the members that were in attendance. And these are the opening and welcoming remarks by the chair. The apologies that we received. Consideration and adoption of the agenda. Then the briefing by the eThekwini Metro. And the question raised by the members. Members will indicate, like we did on the previous one, Chair, if there are changes that they need to, or amendments to the minutes.
Honorable members, you may just indicate on the correctness of minutes if there's any hands. I'm just going to assume if there's no hands that the minutes are then correct. And then I will then ask for a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the 20th of May. Honorable De Block, may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I have some small corrections of typos in section 5 under the Moana issue. There is an inconsistent spelling of Mr. Msimango's surname. Sometimes it's spelled Msimang instead of Msimango, which I believe is correct. So perhaps Secretary just have a look through and find those issues that happened twice that I could find.
Okay.
And the second issue is the other surname of Mr. Folds. Sometimes he's referred to as Mr. Grant, which is incorrect. That's his first name. And then his surname is Folds, Fowlds, not Fowler, as it's spelled there. Just small typos. Thank you so much, Chair. That's it from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable De Block. Chair?
I'm here at Chileka.
Oh, okay.
Now I will ask for a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the 20th of May. Is there a mover? Honorable De Block.
Thank you, Chair. I move.
Thank you, Honorable De Block. Is there anyone or any member who would like to second Honorable De Block? I see honorable members. Honorable Makasi, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I move to second Honorable De Block in adopting the minutes with the minor changes that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Makasi. I think those were the two sets of minutes that we received as honorable members. And the two sets of minutes have been duly adopted. I think we have come to the end of our portfolio committee meeting. Is that correct, Chileka?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay. You see, when you are saying it's correct, then I even feel more energy now. Honorable members, we have oh wow. This is the first time that we are finishing in time for the past month that we've had our online meetings. We've always gone over our time. But today we are within time. We are done before 12:30. And I know for those that needs to proceed to the plenary at the Good Hope Center, that you will be able to get your buses at 12:30. And we do hope to see you next week on Tuesday again for our next portfolio committee meeting. So the meeting is closed, and you may have a blessed week ahead of you until we see each other again next week, Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Well done,
Thank you,
Acting
Chair.
Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chairperson. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
colleagues.
Thank you, colleagues.